Hello everyone, welcome to the Buzz the Prey Manga. Today we continue the latest Global Freeze chapter, rewritten and edited by me in English for a smooth reading experience. All visuals and story flow are personally edited to give you the best manga style storytelling. Support the original creator by checking the official manga. So let's dive right into the today's chapter.
Chapter 2593 Goodbye, Freeman 1.
Die.
Freeman tilted his head, the eyes on the screen blinked, and he even added an unbelievable effect to himself. I'm a visionary. The human body can't adapt to this place, so I've switched to one that's more suited to it. This project has taken me decades. He spoke of this with great pride, pointing to his head and saying, from brain-computer interfaces to physical modification, step by step I've transformed my flesh and blood into a mechanical body. Now, theoretically, I've achieved immortality. Zhang Yi remained silent. He had already witnessed what silicon-based civilizations would become in their later stages. Immortality is impossible, but it is certainly possible to live longer. However, what's the point of living like that, without a physical body and unable to enjoy the pleasures of being human? At this point, Freeman suddenly lowered his speaking speed, as if he were talking about something very solemn. You have to stay in order to see it. Zhang Yi's expression darkened. What did you see? The ideal state. Mechanical Freeman stretched out a hand and pointed to the towering black tower in the distance. A red light shone from his knuckles, as if he were using a cursor to highlight Zhang Yi. That's the place. You came here because you wanted to get to that place, right? That place is the core of the Sandstalker civilization, the central hub of the entire Martian world. This is the answer for all of us who want to live longer, live more easily, and never again be constrained by Earth's politics and resources. Only the existence of a more advanced civilization can solve the existing problems on Earth. He spoke with such intensity that his eyes were almost glowing, even if it was just a glimmer of light composed of pixels. Zhang Yi listened without any expression on his face, only nodding slightly. Elon Freeman probably has no idea about the changes on Earth right now. He didn't want to expose the truth, because the shattering of a dream is too cruel for anyone. So you came here and transformed yourself into a lump of iron, squatting there for 20 years, just to squeeze into the tower? I wanted to figure out how to get in there first. Freeman raised his hand and made a helpless shrug. The mechanical life forms here are so xenophobic. Damn it. They've tried to kill me countless times. So, I have to become a part of them first in order to hear any really useful inside information. To this end, I transformed myself into a mechanical life form of the same type as them, replacing the mechanical core of a sans layer. He smiled, his face full of pride, and with a longing that Zhang Yi couldn't understand. Humans are tourists here. Machines are residents. Tourists can only take photos in the park, while residents are allowed to enter the archives. As he spoke, he chuckled to himself, as if he were talking about a judgment he was proud of. Zhang Yi looked at him for a few seconds, then suddenly smiled. That's exactly what I was thinking. If you don't treat them like family, why should they open the door for you? Freeman's screen face showed an expression of great minds think alike, and he nodded vigorously. That makes perfect sense. When I said I was going to establish a Second Life base on Mars, Tong and his gang of old foxes just thought I was doing utopia. Only I knew that Earth's ceiling had been reached. Resources, religion, power, race, these conflicts are becoming increasingly apparent. If the Earthlings continue down this path, they will inevitably head towards self-destruction. In the end, everything will have to be reshuffled in a higher order. So, I need to serve it early. I don't want to wait to be invited. I want to walk in myself. Zhou Ke looked at him and frowned slightly. What about the others? There were over 200 volunteers who came to Mars with you. Are they still alive? She was referring to the group of volunteers who came with him back then. A brief stutter flashed across Freeman's screen, as if someone had suddenly lowered the frame rate. He was silent for a few seconds before smiling. They're not used to it. Some people were swept away by the sandstorm, some dug down into the abyss, and some saw things they shouldn't have seen. Mars was never meant for them. He spoke casually, but there was a hint of cold, metallic sarcasm in his last laugh. Yang Xinshin flew up from the ruins below. She had been recording the energy spectrum down there and had only just put away her equipment. Her expression was solemn. "Where is the key you mentioned?" She looked at Freeman. "You just said that to enter that core area, you need to get the key first. We can reach other areas of this world, but that tower is the only one we can't even pinpoint the coordinates of, let alone get close to." Freeman blinked at the screen, as if admiring their professionalism. "Your analytical skills are far superior to those of the group I brought back then. So, I'd be happy to work with you." Freeman's eyes were very bright as he stared at Zhang Yi and the others, as if he had seen a glimmer of hope. "I knew that as long as I existed long enough, a new batch of Earthlings would eventually arrive. I just didn't expect that people would come after only 20 or 30 years. I can help you find the key, but you must agree to one condition." Elon Freeman told Zhang Yi that he had lived here as a sand raider for nearly 30 years and had thoroughly studied the place. However, he did not have enough ability to obtain the key to enter the core area. The condition he proposed to Zhang Yi surprised Zhang Yi greatly. He said that once they entered the core area, Zhang Yi needed to help him find someone. A woman. On his head, the display screen switched to a different image, a portrait drawn using AI. A woman whose appearance is almost indistinguishable from that of a human, with only subtle differences, such as her unrealistically exquisite face and her silky smooth silver hair. "Who is she? You gave up everything to come to Mars, just to find her." Zhang Yi stared at Freeman's mechanical life form with a lot of questions on his mind. "A large part of the reason is her." Freeman changed back to his own face, and his voice was full of emotion. "She is the source of my strength to go to Mars at all costs." Zhang Yi, Yang Xinshin, and the others looked at him with puzzled expressions. Elon Freeman, the richest man on Earth more than 20 years ago. At that time, humanity was far from possessing the technology to survive on Mars. How could he possibly have a connection with a woman from Mars? Chapter 2594 Goodbye Freeman 2. Zhang Yi and the others looked at this legend from decades ago with curiosity in their eyes. "All right, please begin your story." Zhang Yi shrugged at him, indicating that he should tell him about his connection with that Martian woman. Freeman pressed down on the exaggerated brim of his hat, and the screen first showed static on his face before switching back to a clear image. "That was in 2012. I was in a car accident in San Francisco. When the airbags deployed, everything went black. When I woke up, I found myself in another world. It was a technologically advanced world where everything was white, cars flew everywhere in the sky, and buildings were constructed using a lot of white metal and glass. At first I thought it was a dream, but I soon realized that it was all real. And do you know what surprised me the most?" He kept it a secret, speaking mysteriously. Zhang Yi crossed his arms and asked cooperatively, "What is it?" A mysterious smile appeared on Freeman's two-dimensional face as he lowered his voice and said, "When I looked in the mirror, I saw a face that wasn't mine." Zhang Yi, Yang Xinshin, and Lu Karen exchanged glances. So you woke up and suddenly found yourself not being yourself?" Zhang Yi touched his chin. "I seriously doubt you're dreaming." No, I know for sure that it wasn't a dream," Freeman said with a smile, without the slightest hesitation in his eyes. "That is indeed true. Because when I woke up, I met other people from the Sandstalker civilization. After they heard my story, they took me to see their elders. Well, in advanced civilizations, they are like the leaders of our nation. The elder told me that I had experienced a transfer of consciousness, and the body I was in at that time belonged to a patient who had been in a coma for 3 years. Consciousness transfer? Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow. This was the first time he had ever heard this term. You, who were in a car accident on Earth, had your consciousness transferred to someone else on Mars? That's right, that's exactly it. Freeman's tone was full of nostalgia and sighs. However, Zhang Yi and Yang Xinshin keenly sensed that something was amiss. If we consider that in 2012, more than 40 years ago, when Freeman arrived on Mars, it was still a very advanced civilization. How could it possibly become such a lost world in such a short time? Based on their exploration of the Martian world, this doesn't seem like a change that has occurred in just a few decades. However, Zhang Yi did not voice this question. He intended to listen to Elon Freeman's story. And then, how long did you stay here before going back? Zhang Yi continued to ask. 7 years. I've been here for a full 7 years. Freeman stated definitively. That's impossible. Luke Heron immediately objected. I found out that you were indeed in a car accident in 2012, but you only stayed in bed for 6 months before waking up. So it can't be 7 years. Because after 7 years, you'll have already founded Tesla Motors and rapidly risen to become a world-class technology company. Freeman smiled mysteriously. I'll explain that to you later. Please let me finish my story first. Everyone suppressed their doubts, but Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin already had some ideas in mind. Zhang Yi, in particular, couldn't help but think of his own rebirth. For many years, he's been pondering whether he traveled back in time or to a parallel universe. Perhaps what happened to Freeman is related to his own deeds. The longer I stay on Mars, the more I get used to it. Because the civilization here is highly developed and people get along very harmoniously with each other. His tone became cheerful. Did you know? The technological civilization here has advanced to the point where people don't need to work anymore. In other words, people enjoy equal access to resources. People are born without having to work and can get almost everything they want. Therefore, there are no social classes or a gap between the rich and the poor. People can work out of their own interests or simply relax and enjoy life. What is this? This is the ideal state. As Zhang Yi and the others listened, their eyes couldn't help but fill with longing. Really? Is there really such a good thing in the world? That was the ultimate dream of the Earthlings for countless years. Ling, however, said to Zhang Yi and the others, there's nothing surprising about this. When civilization reaches its end, resources will not be scarce, so people will no longer need to compete for the resources for survival. Only. She paused, glancing around. Didn't you all see how it all ended? Zhang Yi and the others then realized what was going on. The Sand Raider civilization did not enjoy its former glory and was eventually destroyed. This made them feel extremely regretful. Why is this happening? I don't quite understand. Thaddeus Su said with a sigh. Isn't the ideal state one where everyone is equal and can live happily? Why was it destroyed? Zhang Yi said, let's hear what Mr. Freeman has to say. Sigh. Freeman sighed. It's a long story. When I first arrived on Mars, I never imagined that such a powerful and prosperous civilization would perish. He shook his head. It's a long story. I'll explain it to you slowly later. In short, those 7 years on Mars were a huge turning point in my life. I also met my wife there. Her name is Nasai. Freeman silently turned up the screen brightness by 1 notch. It was the light in his eyes. She had 3 beautiful braids, adorned with silver beads that jingled as she walked. She taught me their heart rhythm ritual and took me to many places on Mars. She showed me the beauty of this world. Freeman then went on to recount many stories about himself and Nasai at length. Zhang Yi and his team listened attentively, hoping to glean some clues. Over the course of 7 years, I fell in love with this civilization. I even felt that it wouldn't be bad to just live here. But one day, Naschi suddenly told me that sooner or later I would be sent back to Earth. Zhang Yi placed his hands on his chest and said calmly, she told you to go see her after you come back? Yes. Freeman raised a mechanical hand, as if touching a breeze. The last night was on the Wind Tower in Evan City. She pressed her hand to my forehead and said, you should go back now. I'll be here, waiting for you to return in the future. When I opened my eyes again, I was already back in the hospital. Here ends today's chapter. I hope you liked it. Kindly do also subscribe to my gaming channel. I have to Fina a way to survive. Thanks.
Alright, that's it for today's chapter. Tell me in the comments which part you enjoyed the most. If you love manga style stories, Don't forget to like the video and subscribe the Buzz Play Manga. See you in the next chapter with more surprises.